Hi, welcome back to my channel. Today's video, I don't know why I paused, is for The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. Now, we shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but if you look at the cover, which I'm going to put up right now, it looks to me, just by looking at the cover, that it would be a romantic comedy. That's what I thought going in. As a matter of fact, it's even called a romantic comedy, but I felt it was much deeper on levels that got me thinking and created a bond between me and some of the characters. And in order to get started, I think what I will do is read the summary. Sometimes I think it's important to do that, and sometimes I don't. But let's read it, because this book has got something a little bit different when it comes to a romantic comedy, meaning the word romance is in there. So let's read the summary. Three women who seemingly have nothing in common find that they're involved with the same man in this smart new rom-com by Beth O'Leary, best-selling author of The Flat Share. Now, I did read something of Beth O'Leary's. I didn't read The Flat Share, but I read, it's not popping right up. I'll think about it, but I did read one of her books last year. In any event, let's continue. Siobhan is a quick-tempered life coach with way too much on her plate. Miranda is a tree surgeon and used to being treated as just one of the guys on the job. Jane is a soft-spoken volunteer for the local charity shop with zero sense of self-worth. These three women are strangers who only have one thing in common. They've all been stood up on the same day, the very worst day to be stood up, Valentine's Day. And unbeknownst to them, they've all been stood up by the same man. Once they've each forgiven him for standing them up, they let him back into their lives and are in serious danger of falling in love with a man who seems to have not just one or two, but three women on the go. Is there more to him than meets the eye? And will they each untangle the truth before they get their hearts broken? Now, how do you feel about reading a book when it appears that somebody is cheating not once, but twice? Quite possibly sleeping with three women. Now, nobody likes a cheater, okay? So reading a book where you have someone that is a potential cheater, at least by the premise, you wonder, what are you going to get out of this book? But before we worry about that, let's talk about each character. And yes, I'm dealing with a cat pushing everything around on my desk again. Now, we'll talk about Siobhan first. Siobhan was a woman who was hurt by a previous relationship, and she had something that really impacted how she felt about herself. But she had other experiences, and in these experiences, yes, it included her relationship with our male protagonist. By the way, his name is Joseph Carter, and I think that was his name might have been in the... No, his name wasn't actually in the thing. All right, so Joseph Carter was the man that Siobhan was involved with. Okay, but let's just move on for a minute. We're going to talk about Miranda. Now, Miranda was a woman that was supposed to have a Valentine's Day lunch with Joseph, but guess what? He stood her up. Well, what is it about Miranda? What do we learn about Miranda? Well, she's a woman who is a tough woman. She's a tree surgeon, so she's working with the guys, and she's strong, and she's working with strong guys. And she is trying to figure out, why was I stood up by Joseph? Where was he? Then we have a third woman, Jane. Jane is different than Siobhan and Miranda. She's quiet, she's reserved, she's a bookworm. She works at a charity shop. And she's also in a place of healing, okay? Now, her relationship with Joseph is different than perhaps Miranda and Siobhan's. In fact, her and Joseph became friends. But even though they became friends, he stood her up too on Valentine's Day. So what is up with Joseph? What is it about Joseph that has him in this book involved with 3 different women? And can we respect him enough as a character to want to continue reading the book? Or do we do what I know that I do, and a lot of readers do? Do we start to judge Joseph and his choices? And which, if any, or which of the 3, or how do we feel about all 3 women? And if this is a romance, because it's called a rom-com, a romantic comedy, then there's going to be a happily ever after. Well, how can you bring in a happily ever after when you have 3 women and 1 man? Well, let me tell you something. This book was really, really good. As a matter of fact, it was much, much better than I thought. And I even reread the last couple of chapters twice because they hit me so hard. The conclusion was very, very, to me, very touching. Now, I will say that when I was reading the book, the first 5 chapters, the first 10 chapters, I'm filled with angst because I don't like anybody to have a broken heart. But the deeper you got into the book, you start to realize that there is a story that had a beginning and a story that will have an end or an ending. And that beginning story impacted the reason, or was the reason, that Joseph knew these 3 women. I don't know if there's anything more I want to say. I'm trying to be careful because I don't want to give you any spoilers. But I will tell you that Beth O'Leary did a great job. She really, really did. She really, really did. It's a really good pacing. You get a chance to meet everybody. You get a chance to understand their dynamic and the drama and the conflicts. But then you're left with a conclusion that would just warm your heart, because I know it did with me. So that's all I'm going to say. I was very, vague, as vague as I could be, trying to be specific, but at the same time trying to be vague so that I don't give you any spoilers. So let me tell you about this book. This, I believe, is from Berkeley. It came out April 12th, and it's available at the Kindle store for $9.99 and also for Audible. But here's the thing. When I have a book for review that I don't get a chance to read before the publication date, I go to Hoopla and Overdrive, and sometimes even my using Audible credit, and listen to the book. Well, I'm kind of glad that I was late in reading this because it was available via Overdrive through my public library. And by getting it through Overdrive, I was able to listen to it as an audiobook. The audiobook was great. It had 3 female narrators and a male narrator. So you had 4 narrators. So the story itself was great. But then when you bring in the fact that it had the narrators, it just made it that much better. So that's all I'm going to say about The No-Show by Beth O'Leary. I think it's definitely worth reading. Might be your summer read. Who knows? Bye-bye.